belly dancing costume. There, I said it. Hi, Thak from Thak Ironworks. We're readdressing the skulls for boobs sort of motif once again, this time in a slightly different or more elaborate format. This time we're using aluminum and brass, combining them together to create a different metal. The reason I'm doing this is many months ago I reached out to Diana Bastet from Ukraine, and she is a heavy metal belly dancer. And I've been watching her videos for a number of years now, and I would say if you really want to have context to what we're doing here, you're just going to take a little time out, watch this link right here, and I'll just wait for you patiently. Waiting patiently. Look at it now. Do it now. Welcome back. So what did you think, huh? So now you have a little understanding as to what we're dealing with here. This is very exciting to me because it's incorporating a lot of the things that I'm into, like heavy metal music and sculpture that is functional. I'm all about functional sculpture. That's where armor to me is functional sculpture. This is a different adaptation of that. This is something that has to move very specifically as Diana dances there. So we've got to do something that has both an aesthetic appeal and is functional, comfortable, and safe to actually wear. So bit of a design paradox there to try to balance these elements because I want to do pointy things and make them all come together. I want to make something that's quite aggressive looking, but at the same time quite safe. So anyway, let's get right into it. Skulls. We're going to do a skull for the boob thing again, as we have done before. I was trying to work with weight restrictions and try to keep this as light as possible. So aluminum was the choice that I decided to go to. I'm not a huge fan of aluminum, to be quite honest. It's probably my least favorite metal. But I do have to admit it is quite soft, and especially this alloy that I have here is some sort of electrical alloy for aluminum, and it's very malleable and quite a pleasure to work with. The problem I don't like with is grinding and cutting with aluminum. It tends to clog up abrasives, things like that. But enough about my idiosyncrasies. So we're going to get into that. And I will talk more about the design as we get into it. All you need to know right now is a skull. All right, so I've just done my first pass very quickly, and I did that, didn't show you on the camera, but I had pounded out a dome. So I just had a hollow and then traced out the rough skull on there, the proper sizing, and then just kind of very quickly with no backer at all, I just roughly hammered in the features. So I found that works quite well with the aluminum. It's soft enough to be able to do that. I domed it beyond the depth that I actually needed, so it kind of collapses and sinks down as it goes in there. But it allows me to very quickly to get into the ballpark, like to the 80% of the shape, and then I can start refining it. So now what I'll do is get onto my sandbag and pop out the areas that need to rise up a little bit around the top of the nose, where the teeth are going to be, and the cheeks and stuff like that. Then I can get it back on there, and I might do another without backer thing to try to move it around and get it in position. Once I've got it closer to the actual shape, then I can use the pitch for the backer to do the fine details. So, all right, so I have roughed out the skull in aluminum, and that came out quite nice. The softness of aluminum allows for these giant facets in it, so it gives a really dramatic appearance. I really quite like it. And now what I'm going to do is put a crown on top of the skull here. The whole idea, this is sitting on the boob, and I want that crown sticking up with thorns coming up and making the whole thing very dangerous and aggressive looking. Also, because the heavy metal, we're doing like 80s satanic heavy metal imagery, so inverted pentagrams, and we'll be getting into goat skull and that sort of thing. So that sort of imagery, kind of the LaVey style Satanism is kind of the style du jour for this particular outfit. But at the same time, to me, the contrast is between the aluminum and the brass, giving me that silver and gold sort of effect. So anyway, moving on. Got my piece of brass here, and I've got my little cutout for the rough dimensions of this, so I just need to do a bunch of tracing on this and then get it into the pitch board and start doing the basic outline. So I'll stop talking and get drawing. All right, so I've done my first pass on this, and I know what you're thinking. Ew, that's all you got? And no, that's not all I got. You gotta hang in with me, people. Trust me. I'm gonna just put some GAT on this, get rid of the Sharpie marks, and then I'm gonna pull the whole thing off and anneal it. The brass work hardens very quickly, and I basically like to do an annealing every time I do a pass over it. So there's our first pass. Let's do annealing and get back into it. I'll be retracing and go over my second pass then. Without delineating the pentagram here, this has a very Wonder Woman sort of look, which is not what I'm going for. Okay, so I've finished 2 passes. I'm ready to start pass number 3. Before I do that though, I'm gonna go over to my little curved stake there, and I'm gonna drop in some of the differences in height a little bit. Let me just show you. Okay, so I've just gone over the stake and I raised up the areas that need to be raised up where my overlaps and stuff are. So now we can go back onto the pitch board here. I'll just heat this up with the heat gun a bit and slap it back on, clamp it down, and then I should be able to go for perhaps my final pass. Number 3, probably it's going to take a 4th one, I'm guessing, but it really depends on at what point I cut off the detail, like how rustic a finish do I want to have. And I tend to like it to be very tooled and very, I don't know, primitive looking, so we'll see how it goes. All right, pass number 3, and quite obviously I'm going to need to go to a 4th pass, but we need to jump ahead to some other stuff. So I'm going to show you this, which is the piece that I made earlier, the other one here. So this becomes this once it's cut out and shaped around there. You can see the skull there and the crown on top, and that whole thing just nestles in. If you look at my beautiful pec boob here, it's going to be in like that, but there should be more stuff in Diana's. So anyway, that's where we're going with that, but we got to move on to the other components. Namely, I'm doing a goat skull belt. So this is sitting actually higher on the torso here. This happened to be where I made the piece just to get my relative scale. So I'm going to be doing the horns out of brass, and they will be segmented so they can actually move like a belt, and then this little skull piece here. So that is what we are going to do right now. And we'll just go over to the stump here. I've got my chunk of aluminum, and starting point is just to make a little bulge. So it is that big. By about that big. And I will just dish that out into the wooden stump. This aluminum is extremely soft in comparison to steel. So there we have it. Now what I will do is draw out some of the features on there. We'll get it moved over to my little block and start pounding in the rough features. Okay, so I did one pass with no backer in there, so just a bulge, and I was just working the rough shape in. After that, I pulled it out, put it onto the stake, and popped up the high spot. So now I've got this, all the high spots kind of pushed out, everything is very much distorted. I'm gonna try one more pass with no backer in there to try to sink in the eyes and try to get everything more or less into the right plane. After I've got that, then I can put in the pitch and go in for the very fine detail. One of the neat things about the aluminum is that it's soft and it takes so long for it to work hard that I probably won't have to anneal it. I didn't have to anneal it with the skull. I don't think I will with what I'm doing here. I know that you can anneal aluminum, and we may address that in a future video, but I don't think I'm going to need to for this particular application. Here we go. Pass number 2 with no backer, and the detail is starting to come in. I have just gone onto the shot bag from the inside and pushed out, so everything looks very bulgy. But now we got to make it look more bony. It's retaining too much water, so we've got to dry this out. So what I'm going to do now is flip it over. Got my pitch, I got my heat gun, and I am going to heat up some pitch. Yeah.
They have like their own merch. They got like more professional looking shirts and stuff like that. And they have a pink, like a pink hoodie on it that says Taco Liquid. Because they always like, yeah.
Ah! Fuck that thought! Oh my god! Don't touch that. Jesus Christ.
They want a nice pitch.
Yeah. Okay, so the pitch is pretty much melted here, and I just stuck my finger in it, and that was really quite painful. I would suggest, if you're doing this at home, don't stick your finger in it, because it still hurts. Anyway, so now that is melted and still should be thick enough, and the aluminum is very hot as well. Oh. But if you find that this is too hostile a sport for you, then I don't know. I suggest maybe you make like an orchard and grow a pair. If you want to do something like this, you've got to man up. You got to be ready for a little bit of abuse. Anyway, moving on. All right, several days have elapsed, and this is the state of things at this point. I've got all the components roughed out, and I'm just going to do a quick overview of where we're going. So let's start at the top here. At the head, we've got a tiara that I've made with the thorny knotwork, and then I did a gorilla skull. Also looks kind of like a bear skull, so it wasn't real anatomically accurate on that one. I don't really care. Just wanted to create skulls, as that, as you can see, is the overall theme here. So that is the tiara. Also, I revisited my raven skull, since that's such a popular motif, and I'm just doing a necklace that is just tying the pieces together, just an accent piece. So this one is pretty much done. I just need to do a loop on it and then make it into an actual pendant. So that is that. And then we've got our breast cups here, the skulls. So I've got my 2 skulls roughed out. They're a little bit different. And I might spend a little time trying to make them a little bit more symmetrical as far as design, but not too much. I don't mind the fact that they look a little bit different. All skulls are different, and I think that's fine as well. So I've got my crown ready on the one here, and the other piece is all been repoussed out, and now it's time for this one to be cut out and fit onto the top there. So some fitting to do there. And last but not least, we come down to the belt portion here where I did the goat skull, and then I've done these horn pieces which are going to be riveted onto a piece of leather so that they move well worn. I don't know if I'm articulating myself there, but if I can get them mounted correctly, they should stay in position, but at the same time be able to articulate and move with the body. So that is my plan there. So I've got a lot of fine tuning to do today to get all these pieces together and then do the finishing on them. We're going to do a contrast where we brighten up the aluminum, and then we'll antique our brass and pull out the highlights on the brass to try to get some really stark contrast. I'm really going for really in-your-face sort of contrast because the nature of the whole belly dancing thing. You're up on stage and there's lights and shadow and stuff like that. I want something that's going to catch the light and stand out. So I'm not looking for super refined detail close up on this stuff. What I'm looking for is kind of what I call the 15-foot rule, where you're sitting in an audience on stage that you can be able to catch some of the detail. Same token, I want to have enough close-up detail that this thing has a visual interest at different levels of approachability. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. Design-wise, as I mentioned earlier, this stuff has to work with the body as the body moves. So Diana is, in addition to being a very beautiful woman, is also a very talented dancer, but also is a talented designer, that she designs all of her costumes. She actually makes costumes for other people as well, and is an artist in her own right in just being able to put those together. So I'm really going to be relying on her, sending her all these components, and then she's going to have to mount them onto her costume and make the whole thing wearable. So I'm hoping that she'll be able to pull it all together to its optimum appeal. A few things she's already pointed out to me is that underneath the breast, she doesn't want anything protruding down, which really doesn't work well with the skull. With the upper jaw here, that piece extends down there. So we're already running into an aesthetic, the form to function sort of conundrum, and I'm not sure how that's all going to work out. I'm going to have to talk with her about that and see if this will fly as it stands here, or if she's able to modify something to make it still look good and still function. So there's stuff like that that I really it makes things interesting. As a sculptor, I like to make things from a purely aesthetic background, but I like the functional aspect of it, and that's trying to make something work within given parameters and still have an aesthetic and a look that you're going for is kind of the fun part. And with this collaboration, what I like is that I'm only one cog in the wheel here. I'm making my components for the costume. Diana will be putting the rest of the costume together. Then she'll be designing a dance, doing that, and somebody else will be doing the video work on that. So all these components stacking together, and my videographer, I should point out too, who's putting this whole thing together and editing it, that all these things come together so that there should be this visual video at the end where Diana does her dance. That this is just a whole collaboration of different artists, and I find that very interesting. So enough chit chat, let me dive back into it. I think what I'll do is get into the skulls here, see if I can make them a little bit more similar, and then I need to start chopping out the crown. So I'm trying to figure out how to get these segments working together and then mounted onto a piece of leather. It's a little bit tricky. I think the brass pieces on themselves are going to be fine, but then how do I get it that it sits onto the aluminum there and everything rivets together? So I'm just trying to work out the logistics of all that, but have no fear, I'm sure I'll figure it out. I am a professional. Right now what I'm doing is these things were just roughed into place, so I'm going to actually just tap them to try to level things out, and I might have to do some grinding and some fine tuning to get these pieces to all play together nicely. I have my collection of skulls here. Everything is, all the holes are put in. I put a series of holes along the sides of the skulls for sewing them on. Everything else is ready to mount. So what I'm going to do now is darken the depressions in this. I'm going for high drama. Remember, this is to be seen on stage, so 15-foot rule. I'm trying to make it dramatic in that sense, which might be a little bit garish when you get up close, but what are you going to do? So I'm going to try to use stove polish paste, which I call stove black, to blacken these areas, and then I will use a acrylic clear coat to seal it all in. Anyway, here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to patina the brass, so I'm going to go in with some gun blue, darken it up, then neutralize that, and then I will buff out the highlights. Let me show you. So the aluminum pieces stove blackened, and then I did a clear coat, which is glossy, and the sheen is a little bit to me, but I'm looking for drama, so that's what I went with. With the brass, I used gun blue and then buffed out the highlights, and then on that I used my metal wax, so a little bit warmer and more subtle, but I'm looking for the contrast there, and I think that these pieces are going to go together fairly dramatically with all the contrast there. So now the assembly begins. To recap, this heavy metal belly dance outfit is based on 80s satanic metal imagery. I'm thinking specifically of the band Venom. I think that basically hits it right dead center, that style of imagery. We've got goat skulls, we've got skulls aplenty, and we've got inverted pentagrams. So covering all the bases, I think, as far as that sort of imagery. Now, I made this out of aluminum and brass. The aluminum for the lightness. Diana was concerned that this thing would end up being too heavy. It came in, the whole costume, at just under 1 kilogram, so about 2 pounds. So quite light, there's not really any weight issues there, and it's distributed nicely throughout the body. So the horns here, of course, move on the leather, and I've got the bottom pieces covered up just to show that she will be sewing that into the belt. This V may not be indicative of what's actually going to happen, so we'll have to see what she designs there. The brass and aluminum also I did with contrast in mind, because this will be seen on stage with lights and from a distance. So I'm trying to go for that factor, that 15-foot factor is the way I always describe it as on stage, where there's detail is stark enough that you can kind of make it out, but as you get up it becomes a little rougher. But I actually like the close-up of this as well, because it is so barbaric and raw. I think that it is a really cool effect. This is, as far as I'm concerned, fantasy armor, and that is wearable jewelry or functional sculpture. So I've done my components here. Now that's the first phase of this art project, if you will. The second phase will be Diana designing and making it into a wearable costume. I've been sewing it onto a costume that she can actually move in. So the second phase is up to her creativity and design expertise to be able to put this together. The third phase after that would be her choreographing a dance and actually shooting a video of her dancing in this. So this is just one cog in the wheel of a multi-step process. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the whole thing and ready to send it out. That's it for this video. Please subscribe, do the bell thing. I've been reading up on YouTube, and the bell notification, very important. So if you want to do me a solid, do that. Also check us out on Patreon. Leave comments below. I really like to get your feedback on this. It's kind of a different venture for me. I've been moving into this territory recently and having a lot of fun with it. So that's it for now. Many more videos come in the near future. I will see you then. Thak out. See ya!